How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Patriot DIY channel. In this video, we're going to be framing and finishing the walls in my shop. Alright guys, now if you've been following the channel for a while, you know we have this side room here in my shop that I'm going to be building out as a bar area and hangout space. So in this video, we're going to be framing and finishing these interior walls. Now this is a metal building, it's a carport style building, and that presents some challenges when you're framing out and finishing your interior walls. Now there are several different ways we could go about doing this, and I'll talk briefly about the different ways that you could do it, and then I'm just going to show you the way I'm doing it. Now the way I'm doing it may not work for everybody, but I do think it's the best way to maximize the space and use as little lumber as possible for the framing. Now I'm going to get in here and I'm going to show you exactly how I'm doing this start to finish, but first guys, if you haven't done it yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, hit that notification bell, and give us a thumbs up. Alright guys, now there are a couple different ways we could go about doing this. We could just frame out these walls the same way we would in a house, and we'd have them in front of our metal studs. That is probably going to be one of the easiest ways to do it. The only issue with that is that you are going to be losing some space in your room because you're building out away from the walls. Now it is just going to be a few inches, so it's up to you whether you decide to go that route or not. And if you are interested in doing that, I have done a full video on how to frame a regular stud wall, and I'll put a link to that right here at the top of the screen. The other way we could do this is build individual smaller walls in between our metal studs, and we just have our studs here on the inside. Now depending on what size metal beams you have, it is probably still going to stick out some, but that is going to save you a couple inches, and it has the added benefit of being able to screw your wooden studs to your metal studs from the side here. This method's also going to be pretty easy. It's just building small individual walls that fit between all of your metal studs, but this way is probably going to require the most lumber. The next way we could go about doing this, instead of setting our studs inside the metal studs going this way, we could turn them this way and we could go flush with the metal studs. This way is probably going to be the most involved, because to join the wooden studs together in this way, we're going to be using a bunch of pocket holes, and it's also going to require us, anywhere we have horizontal studs or anywhere that we're attaching our wooden studs to the metal studs, we're going to have to use some hardware, some L brackets here to attach the wood to the metal. Now doing it this way is going to allow you to maintain the full square footage of your room. It's going to allow you to also use the metal studs to attach your sheathing or your wall material to, so it's not going to require as much lumber because you're also going to be using the metal studs as well. The only downside is the fact that you have to use the L brackets and the other hardware, as well as joining your wood with pocket holes instead of just building it like you would a normal stud wall. So what I decided to do was to frame on the inside of the metal studs with the boards turned sideways. I also decided to use 2x3s instead of 2x4s for this because the width doesn't really matter and they're cheaper. And I went with 4 foot on center spacing. And the reason I can get away with that is because I'm also going to be able to utilize the metal studs in between each of my wooden studs. And the siding that I'm putting on here is 3/4 inch plywood. So with the 3/4 inch plywood, the 4 foot on center spacing, and the metal studs in between, it should still come out nice and strong. Now let's get in here and I'll show you exactly how I did it. First thing we need to do is measure the distance between our metal studs, and then we're going to go over to the miter station and cut down all our lumber. Then we're going to drill pocket holes into one end of each of our vertical studs. We also have these shorter pieces that are also going to need pocket holes, and you'll see what those are for in just a minute. Now we're going to pre-attach our L brackets to each piece that's going to be fastened to the metal studs. The L brackets that I'm using are 1.5 inches. Then we're going to lay out each of our wall sections on the floor, making sure to measure and mark for the stud spacing that we want. Then we'll fasten everything together with pocket hole screws. And once we have it assembled, we can take it over to the wall and fasten it to the metal studs using self-tapping screws. I attach the top part first, then I go back to the bottom with a level to make sure it's nice and straight before fastening that down to the floor plate. And then we'll just repeat that process for each section. And what you didn't see me doing before was adding this extra foot to our wall section to match the height of the existing wall. And then we just work our way around the room, installing each wall section. All right guys, now that I've got the framing done, we're gonna go in and add some extra insulation. You guys that follow the channel know that I already have the radiant foil insulation up, but more insulation could never be a bad thing. So in between here, I'm gonna be adding 1-inch foam insulation. So I'm just going to measure and cut this foam to fit between each of our studs and making it large enough to fit behind our studs anywhere we can. And yes, in hindsight, I know it would have been easier to put this insulation up before the 2x4s, but it is what it is. Just want to give you guys a little close-up of what we got going on here. So you can see at the bottom of each of our wooden studs, we got it attached to the frame with these L brackets on both sides of the stud. And you can see here up on our horizontal pieces, we have them attached in the same way. Now when you're working in a metal building, there's bound to be some issues. So you can see we have some electrical conduit here going on the inside of the studs. So I wasn't able to bring these horizontal pieces all the way to meet the metal stud. So what I did instead was use some of these metal straps to go across. We fastened it to the metal stud here into our horizontal wooden pieces here. Now that's not the strongest connection in the world, but once we get that plywood across here, when the plywood's attached to the metal and to the wood, that's going to shore everything up just fine. Now I do have one wall with just metal siding on it and no exposed studs. So for that location, I will be framing out this wall the way you normally would for any stud wall. For this one, we will be using 2 foot on center stud spacing. And I have done a full video on how to do this, and I'll put a link to that right here at the top of the screen. Once I have that assembled, I'm ready to put it into place. I'm going to be fastening it in place on the sides to the existing studs, and I'll be securing it to the concrete floor using a hammer drill and Tapcon screws. Then we'll get our top section installed, and I'm not going to be insulating this one because my bathroom is on the other side of this wall and I don't see any need in insulating an interior wall. Now I'm ready to prep my siding, and for this wall I'm going to be using T1-11 plywood, and I'll be pre-staining these using my spray gun. Once I'm done spraying, I'm going to go back with a brush and some darker stain, and I'm just going to hit it in random spots to give it a nice rustic look to go along with the theme of my room. Only thing left to do now is get these mounted to the wall. So I'll put each piece in place, making sure to notch out around any electrical boxes or anything like that, and fasten it to the wall using wood screws into each of my wooden studs and self-tapping drywall screws into each of our metal studs. And you can see I'm doing this all by myself, but if you can get some help, it would definitely help out with these sheets that are higher up on the wall. This T1-11 is tongue and groove, so each piece fits perfectly together. Now, of course, you are going to run into some obstacles, so I used a jigsaw to cut out the holes for each of our electrical boxes, and I'm going to be adding an 1.5 inch extender to extend the box out past the siding. You do want to make sure you cut the power to these before you do this, and if you don't feel comfortable, you may want to consult an electrician. The next obstacle we need to get around is those 45-degree supports on the wall. So I measured the distance to the bottom of that support, and I'm going to rip my plywood down at that distance so my bottom piece will fit right up against the bottom of the support. And then for the top piece, I'm going to measure and mark the location of that support, and I'm going to use my jigsaw to cut out a notch so it'll fit right around it. You can see here how the bottom piece fits right up to the bottom of that support. Then I'm going to feed my top in over the support, and that notch is going to allow it to drop right down into place. And with a little bit of YouTube magic, we are finished with the walls, and I think it looks great. All right, guys, we are finished, and I couldn't be happier with the result. It looks exactly like I wanted it to. You can see I even went ahead and got my TV mounted on the wall, and this room is really starting to come together. And while it was a pretty big job, I know it's something that you can take on for yourself. Now, obviously, I used this T1-11 siding and gave it a rustic look, but this process could be used for any wall material that you want to use, whether it be plywood, sheetrock, or anything else. Now, I'm glad I was finally able to get this done, and I have a lot more to do here in this room. We're going to be building some cabinets, we're going to build a bar, and all of that's going to be here on the channel. I'm also debating on whether or not I want to do the ceiling in some corrugated metal. I think that would look cool. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. And let me know if you guys have any questions on this process or suggestions on things that could have been done different. If you are in the process of finishing the walls in your shop, I hope this video helped you out. Don't forget, guys, I will have links to all the tools that we used in the description below if you want to get those for yourself. And if you want to help support the channel while getting some behind the scenes stuff and exclusive access to early release videos, we do have the new PatriotDIY community that you can join. and I will have a link to that in the description below as well. That'll get you guys some access to some content that the rest of the world doesn't get to see, so you can check that out if you're interested. But that's it for how to frame and finish the walls in your metal shop. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.